This is Dan. I think this is probably the most important video that I'm probably have done yet and probably will do, just because I think this is such an important topic that one of the things I've noticed in a lot of men that are become aware of what's happened to them, there tends to be some shaming, especially towards regret parents. And I think that's very detrimental to our cause. I think it's detrimental to families, and it creates further trauma that is damaging. And so I think it's important that we understand like how these things happen in our culture, how this became a norm in our society, and how we approach our parents. When I started learning about this, I knew in my heart that my mom never ever did anything to hurt me, and she never would have made a decision had she been given factual information. And it's, we trust those that, when you take your car to the mechanic and you say, I want you to, fix whatever is causing the engine light to come on, the mechanic looks at it and says, well, this and this and this is wrong, and this is what we need to fix, then we should be able to trust that mechanic, okay? And when it comes to our health, we have these doctors who are supposedly studied these things for years and are supposed to know all about the anatomy, all about the physiology, all about how the body works and all that kind of stuff, and they're supposed to help us correct our body. So, it's basically the division of labor in economics. Some people are really good at certain things, and we allow them to make money doing those things. So we expect that we can trust our doctors to give us factual information. So when I started learning about this, I never once blamed it on my parents, because I have amazing, loving parents, and they have done so many wonderful things in my life. And my mom is an amazing person who does amazing things in her job and is a social worker with a master's degree, and she does counseling, and she's a very emotionally caring, loving person, and she has been that way all my life. And so I basically wanted to sit down with her and talk about this, because I think this needs to be said, and I think there needs to be a positive approach from men to talk to their mothers about this. And I think it's important that every male that finds out about this and is intelligent enough to realize what's actually happened to him can talk to his parents, So, well, this is my mom.
Hi. Yes.
So I'm going to ask her some questions. I haven't really gotten into this depth with her on this issue, so some of these things may be new to me a little bit, but we're going to ask her some questions. I want to kind of find out, when she was having me, like what kind of things the doctors, before leading up to my birth, what did the doctors tell her about what circumcision actually was? Did they say anything to you?
They didn't tell me anything.
So they never mentioned anything?
It was never mentioned. It was just assumed that this was we were told that, if children didn't have this, they would be different from all the other children, and they would be more susceptible.
Those terms, they said they would be different.
Well, the doctors didn't say that. It was just a cultural expression.
Yeah.
Like, it was just known. This was just something that it wasn't verbalized by the doctor or the nurse or anyone in the hospital. If this was just an accepted norm, every child that was male got circumcised at that time in the 70s. And I never questioned it, because I was told from articles I read or information that I achieved through other mothers that circumcision prevented kids from having infections, that they were cleaner, that there was less likely they would get cancer when they were older. I mean, so it was not that the doctors ever said that to me. It was just my peers,
everything
other mothers,
heard about it, right?
my mother. Everything I'd ever heard about it made it sound like it was a very safe and acceptable experience, and that babies really didn't feel that much. They didn't feel the pain. That their nerve endings weren't all complete, which I now know is absolutely a lie. That it's not true. But that's what I believed. But even with that belief, when you were circumcised, you asked me about this, and so when you were circumcised, I was very concerned. Oops.
It's okay.
Okay.
Keep going.
So I was very concerned, and I knew, my instinct was to go down to the nursery, and I said, I want my son. As soon as you're done, I want my son. And they, brought you out. You were still crying, you were screaming, and I took you and nursed you and I comforted you. But I just never thought.
Did they have you sign like a consent form or something, or was there?
No.
And they never said. They just said, "Oh, okay, we're taking him for this."
Yeah. Okay, it's time for him to get a circumcision. They just took him out of the room.
Did they ever ask you or tell you the risk or benefits of the?
No, nothing like that. There were nothing was ever discussed. It was just like, it was kind of like, this was part of the procedure. You just did this. This is what happened.
This is also part of the culture. Well, not that part of the culture, but the idea that, or the ability to talk freely about sexual ideas or information is very kind of hidden. Nobody talks about that thing, right?
Right.
Like especially you're growing up, and that's like a taboo to talk about sexual. That's hidden between the man and the husband and wife behind closed doors.
Yeah, because I grew up in the 50s, and it was in the 70s when I was young, very young, when I had children, and so I believed whatever I was told to believe, to some extent. Like, I didn't allow, they wanted to take an x-ray of me when I was pregnant with Renee, and I said, no, I was only 22 years old, but I knew that was wrong. You're not taking an x-ray of me.
Yeah, and of course, if you had known anything about this,
but I never,
there would been no way.
There is no way. I was not happy with it as it was, even though I was still nervous.
That was your natural instinct.
It was my instinct to be at that door, and I remember this distinctly.
So did you hear me?
Yes, I heard you screaming. And it really was horrible. It was horrible. And then later on, as a social worker, when I worked at a hospital, I would go in there on certain days where they were doing circumcision. I could not stand to hear those babies screaming. I couldn't do it. So I would have to leave. They would line them up, and that's what they would do, because they, we were all sold this, bill of goods, this thing that this was okay, that this was beneficial somehow, and now I'm thinking, how could we have believed that? But how could we have trusted to that extent? It's insane. It really is.
Well, it's taboo subject in the beginning to talk about, and then the doctors themselves are circumcised.
Right. They don't know. They believe the same. They're culturally believing the same thing that I'm believing.
And they have, they have that male ego wrapped up in this, where I'm such a stud. I'm so, manly, and I get the ladies kind of thing, and so it's wrapped up in this men's need to be, this, I guess, manly person or whatever, but.
Yeah, I think it was just so accepted and ingrained that it's bizarre, really, for generations. It's, in this country, it's been accepted as the thing to do, and really no question. And that's what really boggles my mind, and really is disturbing to me to realize that now.
Another question is, okay, so before you obviously saw me, and then after. Was there when you saw the wound and it was kind of open? Did that have any?
They had it covered, and it just looked very, very red, but they bled a little, but it didn't bleed a lot, you were. Because all those other babies were left in there screaming, but I got you, and I took you out, and you were just clinging to my clothes like.
So they were screaming after they were done with it. Still screaming.
Oh yeah, they were still screaming. They didn't stop. When the pain is inflicted, the babies start screaming. They don't stop for a while.
Well, there's a lot of differences that happen from child to child. Some people will say, "Oh, he slept through it," and that is basically what's happening is the child is so overloaded with this intense trauma that either number one, they don't understand it, or they can't. You're a baby. You don't even have words or language or anything. All you have is feeling and emotion. Right. So when it's such an intense pain that some babies will go into shock and they will stop. They'll stop crying, and then they're actually in a state of shock. And then the doctors will bring the baby to the mother and say, "Oh, he slept through it." Or sometimes, a lot of times they'll even lie about it, and say, "Oh, he slept through it," even though the baby was screaming because there's a lady who, I guess they thought they were bringing her son back, and I guess the nurse thought that he went through a circumcision, but he didn't, from whatever they were doing in the hospital.
Okay.
And so the nurse told the mother, "Oh, he slept through it," and she didn't even know the circumcision. The baby wasn't even circumcised, and the mother freaked out. Was like, "What? What are you talking about? What did you do?" And then found out that her baby wasn't circumcised. But she knows that this lady's just basically lying to her face, saying he slept through it. That's what they say to all the mothers, to appease the mothers. And then of course, we've understanding how this affects, like following. There's a lot of nurses have noticed that. Everybody's gonna react differently. First off, we're all different biochemically and genetically and all that kind of stuff. We're different. So some babies will react by actually stopping latching on to their mothers, so they won't latch on.
You.
Yeah. So my reaction was different. So I wanted to kind of talk to you about that. So
I didn't. That is interesting because you were like, whoa, you wanted a connection. You wanted to connect very strongly. That was what you wanted. I remember it to this day, and it's 40 years. I mean, it's crazy, but it was just distinct to me, how you were. So, and I remember too, in the hospital that I worked at, they came up with this like a pacifier that had sugary or sweetness on it, and they would put that in the baby boy's mouth.
Sucralose, yeah.
Yes, and so those poor little babies would be sucking like crazy while they were getting cut. They would be sucking on that so they wouldn't cry. Yeah. So then, of course, would they want to latch onto their mother? No, because then that was so much sweeter than breast milk.
Well, I'm just saying that some babies will respond by not latching on, and you said I responded by grabbing on,
holding on, connecting. You wanted to connect. You were like holding on to my clothes even, and I went back to the room without running. I couldn't run. I went back as quickly as I could, and I nursed you. You nursed very, very well. You didn't have a problem with that.
Well, I've never had a problem with eating.
Oh, I know. You never had that, so yeah. So I think, there's a lot to be said though that babies really feel pain, and they do. And to say that they don't is really ridiculous. It's insane to deny the very evidence of what these little babies do.
No, I mean if you're a scientist and you listen to evidence, then the change in the decibel sound or the intensity or there's obviously some visual cues that when you start cutting through somebody's most sensitive part of their body, they're gonna be, some of them say, oh, it's they're crying. I watch these videos online and they're horrible, and the doctors will say to appease the mother. They're actually watching it. This is crazy, but to appease the mother, they'll say, oh, he's crying because he's being strapped down into an uncomfortable position, which is. Are you kidding me? And they'll justify it that way. And then there's an obvious change in the crying intensity of the child. And I'm like, you're a scientist, and you can't, you can't see what's happening in front of your own eyes, and you can't use your own judgment to determine, how it just blows my mind how brainwashed the culture can be.
Yes, groupthink is a really powerful thing.
Yeah.
It really is. It's very scary.
But people have a hard time stepping outside of these social groups because, and the only thing I can think of is even a mother's natural instincts that you had, even a mother's natural instincts are, and I'm not talking about this situation or me, is overridden by the need to be part of a group. Even the most horrible things are accepted as long as, I guess, ostracization. 10,000 years ago was a death sentence to humans, so we had to be able to survive within groups. Mm-hmm. And anyways. Yeah,
and so if you think about how it hit on every level, because it says that basically we're told, your son will go to kindergarten and his penis is going to look different than all the other little boys, so he won't fit in. This is done to protect your child. This is you're not a good parent if you don't do this. Mm-hmm. Basically, that's the message that society gave us. Now, the doctors, nobody told me this. This is what I absorbed through my cultures.
They didn't say a word to you. No, they never mentioned.
No.
This was
in the Air Force Academy hospital in Colorado Springs. Now they did tell me when they were taking you, and so I said, I wanted you immediately after till I could comfort you. So I followed down and waited outside the door. I wasn't allowed in there if I had seen what they were going to do, I probably would have stopped them. I don't know. I would have freaked out, but they didn't, show me what was going to happen. And I don't know. It was like it seems so surreal now thinking about it. Like, how did I let them take my baby out of my arms, and they're going to go and cut on him?
But you don't know. You trust. They're doctors. They're, I mean.
It's it was the protocol. It was the norm, and even though I did question things, a lot of things, but I did not question that, and that is awful. But I did not know to question. I do know that I was concerned, and that's why I went immediately and took you from there. As to, the other mothers were not probably. No other mothers were there. I was the only one there that was waiting outside the door. Yeah. So, anyway.
So now you actually work with people that are dealing with trauma.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I do. Well, I do EMDR, eye movement desensitization, repurposing of memories.
Can you say that? You said that really fast.
Okay.
Say that slowly
Okay.
in that direction.
Okay. Eye movement desensitization, repurposing of memories, and what it is right and left brain stimulation, and I deal with trauma all the time. I'm a trauma-focused therapist, and
You have your master's degree in social work.
yes,
Okay.
I have a master's in social work. I'm a licensed clinical therapist, and I wanted to do EMDR to help people process their trauma. I work a lot with veterans and people who've been in the military with PTSD.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So would this be able to help somebody with this type of trauma, even though it was it's such an infantile stage? I mean, literally, we were infants when this happened.
I've worked with people who will say to me, what's coming up is just black. I see black. And when people are so young that they don't have any words, they can still do EMDR, but their brain can still go through that. But they just don't have words, so what they see is nothing but black. But they have feelings. They have negative feelings, and they don't know where to go with them. And there's that trauma. So really, someone could do this for circumcision, because even though it were 2 days old or whatever they were, or 7 days old, or whatever they do this, whatever they
It's
do now.
8 days old and Jewish.
Okay, but in the United States, I think they do it at the second or third day the baby's born. But
So how does EMDR actually work?
okay, EMDR is right and left brain stimulation, and it's your brain healing itself. And basically, the therapist will it's a process that you go through, and you bring up a memory, or in the case that, let's say you don't really have a memory, it's just all blank because it was pre-verbal. You just bring that up, and then we process it through. And we can use tactile stimulation, sound, and lights, or all three. For some people who are not in touch with their emotions at all, they're so compartmentalized that they really don't feel much. It's hard to get their feelings out.
So would you say it kind of like maybe you have a memory in this area of the brain, and it helps it to
the memories don't change. The memories are still there. It's the negative emotion that is formed in the brain from trauma that is released. The negative emotion is released from the person, not the memory. They have their memory that doesn't change. It doesn't alter the brain in any way, other than the negative energy from trauma is then released. So you still have the memory, but you don't have the negative energy in your brain.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it's your brain really healing itself, which is the most amazing thing.
So that would invite some people that are dealing with this issue may have some solutions for that.
Possibly.
At least the mental issues.
Yes, because I would say, like, when a baby is that young and they're traumatized, and like you were traumatized, and on your neural network, of memories, that's your first big trauma possibly. Birth can be very traumatic also. And so there's that memory, or that's stored in your brain, the negative energy from that. And then the next thing that happens, and the next thing, and so it begins to be built up on your neural network. And so doing EMDR helps to heal the neural network, and when the memories that are connected can even come together and be healed. Of course, there's different traumas and things like that. So.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is, and it's beautiful because You know, it is not mind altering in any way. And it's not. There's no medication. It's just your brain healing itself. It's a very gentle healing process.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I just think that people should understand that we need regret mothers in this movement. Without regret mothers, this is going to be a lot harder. You have to heal your family.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you have to be able to approach your mother or your father and let go of this is an issue and move on in your lives and enjoy. There's a lot more to life than just this, but I think it's important that we, you know, show the respect to mothers who, you know, I mean, the question is, did your mother do this to you to hurt you? Was that her intention?
No way. No, no mother would do. No.
So if you are, I mean, we in the Intactivist movement, when we talk to mothers who are ingrained in this cultural brainwashing, it's almost like they refuse to accept, acknowledge, and they'll still do it. They'll, you know, even with given the information, you know, this is so common sense and so, you know, so obvious that when you give somebody information, you expect that, hey, this is gonna change something with them. But a lot of them, and usually these are uneducated people, you know, I have to say that get in these types of debates online that I've seen. You know, they're not the sharpest tool in the shed, but we see this a lot. And as an intactivist or a man that's against the genital mutilation of children, it's almost makes you a little bit more angry towards, and I can see how that could be carried over towards regret mothers. So it's hard for people to see that. I mean, did your mother really harm you out of it? Now, there's probably mothers that have actually done it for harm. I mean, rare, like what? Very, very exceedingly rare percent of the population would actually do this to harm a child, right?
Very few.
Of course, very few.
Maybe
but there are. But what I'm saying is like, you know, we have to forgive and, you know, and love our family.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to forgive yourself. It's hard to forgive. You know, why did I question it? I do ask myself now, and I even, as a social worker later on and working in the hospital and seeing that and knowing how I couldn't stand to be there. I couldn't stand to hear it. I would get up and leave. It was too traumatic for me. I couldn't do it. But, you know, what did I do about that? Nothing. You know, I just continued to accept that, okay, well, this is what's done. You know, but it's not until now, I think it's so great that you're doing this, that you're really looking at this and saying, wait a minute, why is this happening? Why are we doing this? And really exploring this and saying, what about the baby? What about what's going on here? Why? There's just not enough reason to do this. There never has been. But we didn't see that. We didn't see it, you know, and it's just...
Well, I think as time goes on, it's almost impossible to let the doctors off on this. You know, I mean, I could see maybe, you know, an uneducated doctor in the 70s. I can never get it. I will never get it. I will never understand it, and I don't want to understand it from a, you know, accepting position. But I kind of understand it in those past times how a doctor could be misled. But with today's knowledge, you know, and most of these doctors have to take during their undergrad, they take sociology. And if you've taken sociology and you understand how enculturation happens and how, you know, norms are taken up by society and culture and how they're perpetuated through time.
Yeah. And,
you know, there's if you can't look at this one issue and realize that this is one of those things that we need to get rid of that is, you know, harming children. It's not
helpful. It's not helpful in any way.
Well, it's very damaging. It's damaging.
It is, and so why? There's just no way to justify it. There's no way to continue it when we know what we know now. There's just no excuse anymore.
There isn't.
No. There isn't.
I love you, Mom.
I love you too, Daniel. I love you, sweetheart. I love you, son. Yeah.
All right, so love you guys. Thank you for watching this, and like, subscribe, comment, share as much as you can. And hug your mother, love her, and forgive her. Love you guys.
And moms, forgive yourself.
Yeah, forgive yourself.
Yeah,
You didn't know.
that's right.